All right, and we're live on StreamYard, flipping the mic, the Mets podcast.
Yo.
What's going on, man? How you been?
Doing great. Another week, same old stuff, different day, getting closer to Mets baseball. Can't wait.
Yeah, I am excited. The weather's getting a little nicer outside. It's starting to feel a little bit more like spring. It looks a little bit more like spring. And, I don't know. The snow is pretty much all melted where I'm at. I don't know about you.
Got a little bit on the ground, but not much. It's definitely nice to be able to go out without the heavy jacket and enjoy the outdoors, go for a walk. Definitely liking it a lot. And It means baseball's coming. Spring is close.
It is. No, it's true. All right, so let's get into it now. Let's start out our show here, the second show that we're doing here on the relaunch of Flippin' the Mic. He's Mike Yancey. I'm James Flippin, and we're talking Mets baseball. So some things we've got on the rundown for this evening, the topics, if you will, include the Mets defense. Did they do enough to overcome some of what may, be plaguing them so far, at least in spring training? And we'll see what Mike feels, how I see it when it comes down to names like Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis, Brandon Nimmo, Dominic Smith, Pete Alonso. Not so much, again, on the offensive side, but really more on the defensive side. Some breaking news out of Mets land in spring training down there in Port St. Lucie that the Mets were practicing for the World Series. That sounds pretty good, right? I mean, they're trying to practice to get to the World Series, right? So we'll talk about that.
I don't think it's quite that. I think they were practicing their World Series celebration.
Yes. Well, that is actually the more accurate way to.
I have thoughts, but we'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, so we'll get your thoughts on that. I certainly have some thoughts on that as well. And then there's been a lot of talk about, the Mets assumed closer, the back end of the game guy, Edwin Diaz, who, has decided to bring back his entrance music. I don't know if you heard that, Mike.
I did.
I knew nothing about this entrance music because I didn't go to games last year. Nobody did, so I didn't even know that they had entrance music for guys last year, but apparently they did. So I have the ultimate consideration here when it comes to Diaz. Is it the power of the intro music, which apparently really fires him up and gets him going, or is it the influence of the crowd that might be there this year? We have to worry about, I think, the two different influences when it comes to Edwin Diaz. So we'll talk about that. Carlos Carrasco dealing with a little bit of an elbow issue. So whether or not that's a concern, we can get into that. And then just some random odds and ends, like, some thoughts I have about prospects that we're getting a chance to see in spring training, since there was no real minor league baseball last year. And, it's not going to be as robust as it once was this year anyway. But we'll talk about some prospects. And then a little thought on the Mets uniform. And it has nothing to do with any of the black uniforms or any of that stuff. It's just a little thought on the Mets uniform and an addition that they've made this year that I'm very excited about and that's very appropriate for a rather somber reason, but at the same time, a great addition nonetheless. So again, he is Mike Yancey. I'm James Flippin. You can reach out to us on the various platforms. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. You see his Twitter handle there. Mine is Jama Drop, which is JAMADROP. And if for some reason you're finding this as audio only, follow Mike at Daily Stash, where he's got all his different content going on there with the Mets stuff. So, Mike, talk to me about Mets defense. What do you think? I mean, we're probably browbeaten at this point when it comes to did they or should they have whatever it is with the center field, left field thing and Brandon Nimmo out there in center. But what about J.D. Davis at third most of the time, or Jeff McNeil, having a set position and maybe it being second base, and can he handle that, or can he handle third base? Where are you at with the Mets defense right now?
Well, I think one thing is for sure the lack of a commitment to the DH hurt the Mets in terms of their defense, because they weren't able to commit to moving towards Jackie Bradley Jr. In center field because
to meet his price tag if in fact they had the set DH.
I think if they had the set DH, I think the Mets might have been okay with going towards him. Again, they had already added Almora and Pilar. I think one of them being
Probably
the extra
slated
outfielder.
towards not having the DH at that point. You know what I mean?
Right.
When they Almora, when they signed Pilar. Well, Pilar was late, I guess. I don't know.
And the money you give a guy like Bradley, you're not signing him to be part of a platoon. I mean, you can think that Bradley play against righties and then Pilar or Almora play against lefties. But the way I see it shaking out now, it's pretty obvious. I think McNeil's going to be at second. I think Davis is going to be at third. I think, obviously, Dominic Smith's going to be in left field. And Nimmo's going to be in center. Up the middle, the Mets are better than they were. Take away the DH for a second. Before the offseason began. Lindor's got range for days. Rosario was kind of hold your breath. He would make a lot of unforced errors at short. I mean, he got better, but he was inconsistent. So you got better there. The catching position, I don't even have to talk about Wilson Ramos. I mean, Buffalo is his nickname. So
at the same time, you could mention what a big upgrade it could potentially be. It should, almost any major league catcher was going to be an upgrade.
Listen, you or me would have been an upgrade from Wilson Ramos, a catcher. I used to be a catcher, except I can't throw now. So but neither could Wilson Ramos. So that would have been about the same.
So in other words, you played in like high school, you played catcher.
No, more little league. I wasn't good enough for high school.
Okay. Well, anyway, I played catcher as well, and that means that we're both members of that fraternity, the donning of the
right. So we're both destined to be MLB managers one day. That's the point.
Yes, exactly.
But ultimately, my biggest concern right now, I would say, is third base, because JD is one that makes a lot of good plays that aren't routine. So if he's coming in on one, like a drop bunt, he'll make a good play there. A ball in the hole, he'll spin and make a good throw. It's the ones that are right at him when he has time to think that seem to give him the most trouble. So that's a bit of a concern. And, this is the time of year everybody, like you said last week, is in the best shape of their lives or is really taking a step forward. JD's the guy to watch, and I think, we would have laughed at this notion last year before the season, but I think we're going to see more Luis Guillorme. I think if it becomes a problem, I think the Mets might, do double, especially with no DH, double switching late in the game to get Guillorme's glove into the field if it's tight and they have 1 or 2 run lead. I mean, it's important. He already made one. I don't know if you saw the other day. There was one play on Twitter. He made a stellar. It was like a rocket, and he spun around and plucked it like off the ground, and it was nothing. I mean, he's kind of like a wizard with the glove. So I think you're going to see him. I could see late in the game, even with Almora and Pilar, if they're on the bench, you could have Smith go to first if Alonso just hit and put one of them out there. And you could have some games where the Mets, when they need a break, they'll go with a defensive lineup. But say if you've got a guy like DeGrom that's not going to let much go later in the season. So ultimately, yes, it is a concern. But I think the market dictated, we're not going to know who's going to be hurt and what's going to be going on. And if the Mets need to make an upgrade, I'm confident with Cohen that there'll be guys out there that are tradable. The Kiermaiers of the world, I would have to do more research to think who right-handed would be out there. But, it depends on the standings and stuff. And since we don't have expanded playoffs, so ultimately, they're probably about middle of the pack, maybe a little less. But, defense wins championships. And I'm a little nervous if, we're in a big spot in a playoff push. And, you have a guy like JD at third. Like you said, McNeil could be hit or miss. At second, he's much better than he is at third to me. A lot of people disagree with that. But I think second is his position.
The McNeil one is a little bit less of a how to say this. Like, in other words, I think he'll be fine at second base. Yeah. I mean, he's not going to be an issue there. I certainly don't think. But JD Davis could be a guy that you have enough offense per se, and I'm sort of with you. I feel like you kept going back to him. It's probably for a reason. I don't know if he's going to be able to play defense for, at third consistently for 130 games, 120 games. I don't know what they envision him playing, but, it might end up being a guy like Luis Guillorme winning that job because he's shown a competent bat at the very least. He's not, a base clogger. You put him at the back of the order. I think you could do a lot worse, especially with his defensive prowess. So I think the question becomes, is JD Davis's bat, which 2 years ago you'd say, well, that's a tough question to ask me there, Billy. Last year, it was like, okay, he was still good, but he wasn't as good. I mean, it was a short, what did they play for 2 months? So, I mean, what's the even point?
60 games of it. But he's here because of his bat. There's no joke. There's no denying that. He knows that. Everybody knows that. But at the same time, he's putting in the work. But at the same time, you can put in the work all you want. If you don't have the ability, you don't have the ability. And maybe the third baseman 3 months from now might be somebody that's not on the team. So
yeah, certainly possible. I mean, they talked to the Reds, I think, this offseason about who was it, Suarez?
Like a Suarez Gray package.
They talked about
never really was a huge fan of that. I mean, Gray. I mean, I know the Mets and Yankees are different, but I do believe somewhat in that lack of New York moxie, and Gray completely folded when he was a Yankee. So no thanks. Although look at other guys did good in both places. Look at Curtis Granderson; he was good in both places. So depends on the personality, and you really got to have the stomach for it, because coming to New York isn't just playing baseball. We all know that.
Well, look, that's a great transition, and I think I'll take the advantage to or take the chance to do it. Go right into Edwin Diaz and talk about how there's been a lot of stuff written about lately for whatever reason, kind of getting into Edwin Diaz. I mean, I saw where SNY had a write-up about him and saying, you have to trust him now, like there's no question that he's the goods. And obviously in his small sample size last year, he was very good. Outside of, was that opening day when he blew the game, or was that the second game of the year? No, second game.
I think it was the second game, but I wouldn't swear on a stack about it.
It was awful, whatever it was. I mean, it set. I feel like it was like, here, Braves, like have your season defining moment on game 2, where Ozuna took that, whatever it was, slider. He should have thrown in the slider. I think he actually threw the fastball. And he crushed it to right center or right field, whatever it was.
Well, that got Ozuna going, didn't it? I mean, he had a borderline MVP season.
Yeah, and then he was off to the races. But anyway, with Diaz, it's very interesting to me because again, I can get the song up, but I do have to say, I think his walkout music, if that's what it's called, is pretty sick. It's definitely very inspiring. Like I could see the Citi Field crowd going nuts to this, and I apologize. You hear this? This is when he comes out of the bullpen. He's all ready,
There's got to be a dance with this.
Yeah, a little trumpet. It was a great. All right, so you get the idea.
I do.
There's a great,
I feel like Queen Elizabeth is about to emerge from somewhere. I think that.
Hey, look!
It's great royal family.
If we could get the wrath and fury of the royal family right now channeled into at the end of the game, I think I would take. But no,
they might get upset by this, and maybe it'll take some of their attention away from Meghan Markle. But
so.
But in terms of it, first of all, I'm all in on 2 things. I'm all in on the music because I just think, I mean, it's awesome. It's like terribly good.
But if it's him fired up, then maybe that can overcome his clear issue. At least we saw over a full season,
right?
Pitching in the New York market potentially. And I'm going to throw it out there. Yes, the baseball was bad that year. The seams weren't raised or whatever. He couldn't feel his slider, and it showed. His slider was dog shit that entire season. But, I saw a lot of bad pitch selection from him too, and a lot of woe is me and stuff like that. So, we'll just see. I obviously want him to succeed, and he's got the talent. There's no question about it. But I think we all need to have that moment more than a few times where it's a stress-free 9th inning. No old school Rolaids commercial. You know what I mean? And
I think, first of all, those stress-free 9th inning guys are very few and far between. There are few guys in the major leagues And not every team has that guy that goes out there 1, 2, 3. I mean, that's very rare. And any reliever, that's why everybody has a whip over 1, because they average, and a low 1 whip is considered good. And that means that you have at least 1 walker hit per inning. So therefore is no 1, 2, 3 inning. But in terms of Diaz, here is how you can measure my faith in him. Game 7 of the World Series, bases loaded. I want him with the ball in the 9th inning. I do. Because I think number one, he's the second most talented pitcher on the Mets.
Wouldn't you prefer to have Jacob deGrom out there?
Well, you know what I mean. I mean, let's say deGrom threw 120 pitches already. He can't go anymore. But you get what I mean. I think he's the second most talented pitcher on the team. Overall pitcher. Look at his strikeouts every year. I mean, the guy, when he's on, is DeGrom-esque untouchable. When he's on his top of his game, he is that good. Mm-hmm. And I don't throw that around lightly. And last year he had a fantastic year, and I think we're at the point where he's still so young. I mean, we're definitely at the point where he needs to get the first shot. And, they have to be patient with him. If he gives up, they have a 3-run lead, he comes in, he gives up a run and gets the job done, good. But at the same time, you don't want the home runs to become a habit. That was so worrisome in 19. I think he had a historically bad home run ratio. It's not that he just gave up hits, but I felt like every time he gave up a hit, it was a home run. But to answer your question, I have no question in Diaz starting the year. That's not even on the top of my mind. I think move forward with him. A lot of teams would love to have him in the 9th inning. And I think that is not one of the main question marks for the Mets going to 2021.
Okay, so suffice it to say, you're going to be excited when you hear this coming out of the speakers at Citi Field.
Oh, I'm going to come up with a dance. For a future episode, I'll have a dance.
And, there was a great somebody did something great on Twitter. Like, I don't know if you remember when the Mets were in Miami that one time.
Oh, Gelbs?
Yes.
Yeah, Gelbs, yes.
So they took that and they had him playing the trumpet. They put it, which
that's funny.
They should play that. They should find that clip and put that on the jumbotron.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
So anyway, that's
fun fact. I used to play the trumpet.
Did you really?
I did, but so for all you know, I could have been the person playing the trumpet in that song.
You know what?
Another thing where right before high school, that was the end of that. So.
Well, if anything, we can petition to have you. What I think we should have is you lead it, because I'm sure you could still play a note or two. You know what I mean? Or at least make it look.
I could give a Mean Mary Had a Little Lamb or something. Maybe I could
like the Pied Piper leading the 7-line army. Front of it, like playing and then ball dancing and stuff.
Oh no. Don't give Darren ideas. He'll have me marching through the various cities before they go into the stadium.
Oh man, there you go. That's going to happen now.
I'll have my home apple beanie on.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, so we've talked defense. We've talked a little bit about Diaz. Let's get into this with Carlos Carrasco and whatever he's dealing with the elbow. I guess
it's routine. Don't mean to cut you off, but routine elbow soreness, which he says he's had in the past. One thing I've never understood about MRIs. Rojas said he's not going for an MRI. Why not? At this point, anything with the elbow, get a complete checkup. Make sure everything's good. He says it's routine soreness, and he gets over it. But, of course, we're so jaded. We've been told routine soreness with guys like somebody brought up Jed Lowry, and there was routine soreness, and he never – what did he have, like a couple at bats as a Met, and he didn't even have a hit. And, Noah Syndergaard had routine soreness, and then he was shut down. Even going back to, like, Matt Harvey, it wasn't, like, a big deal, and then all of a sudden he's done. And, we're so used to these things being downplayed. I'd rather get out in front of it, because I'm a firm believer that he could be sore. Something could be bad. If it's rested, it could get better. But at the same time, if he goes back too soon, he could aggravate something and make it worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I would just like to say, as far as you said there's a thing or two you don't understand about MRIs. I just like to say there's everything I don't understand about MRIs. But that being said, good point. I mean, like, why? What's the issue? Is there some sort of like drawback? Like, is like the dye that they inject into his arm like going to be an issue or something like that?
I guess it's also like exposure to radiation, I suppose, that people would like to limit if they don't have to.
That's a good point, and he is a cancer survivor.
Yes, that's also a very fair point. So maybe that's absolute last.
I read where he just got the coronavirus vaccine, and I guess they probably want to take that all pretty easy. I mean, look, they're downplaying it. I mean, that makes me feel good. I mean, obviously, I feel a certain type of way when it's a Wilpon regime down of an injury, and you'd like to think that it's different this time around, in terms of penny wise, pound foolish, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess the question remains whether or not he would technically be. Obviously, he's not going to pitch on opening day.
No,
but whether or not he'd be that second game of the year or whatever.
Well, you know what? I don't think I don't think he would be pitching game 2 anyway. I think the Mets, just because he's been here, I think they might give that nod to Stroman. So they could slot him in as the number 5 just to give him a little extra time. Another thing, if they want to skip a spot, they have a few guys. They have Joey Lucchesi. They have Jordan Yamamoto. They have, a couple of the younger guys. I know they're not going to.
Can I just cut you off real quick?
Sure.
I'm all for the Joey Lucchesi, but shouldn't Jordan Yamamoto get some sort of flair as well? I mean, that you seemed like you just kind of plowed through that one. You know what I mean? Like,
I was happy with that move when they made it in the offseason because he's young. He has 5 pitches. He's definitely got a lot of talent. I think he's like, I hate this. I hate when people use this term, but I'm going to use it anyway. I feel like he's in a very coachable place where he could be a useful piece. And even if we've discussed the long man role or something like that, or being that spot starter that comes up and fills in, because last year we had all these, I don't even want to call them 4A players, but they weren't even worthy of putting on a major league uniform, taking spot starts, and it was 5-0 in the first inning, seemingly every time.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, I think that there's something to be said in a big way for those depth guys that they have as starting rotation options, and also just, guys that are hopefully kind of with the big league club who truly make spot starts. I feel like they never had anybody in the past couple of years who was going to make that spot start from the big league club. I mean, maybe some of that has a lot to do with, the kind of nature of Seth Lugo, where he's got the partially torn UCL and everything, and you're not going to kind of just throw him around as a guy who, oh crap, we need a starter, we're going to use him now. You'd like to kind of plan that out more with somebody like him. So maybe Yamamoto and Lucchesi, I don't even know if they're both going to make the roster. I think they have options, or at least one of them does, or whatever it may be.
They both do.
They'll be the ones on the first call to Syracuse, which is probably going to come. It's going to come sooner rather than later.
Right.
Or if Carrasco doesn't actually start the year ready, then they get the nod on the opening day roster.
Yeah. And you know what? The Mets also have a couple of, guys who are impressing in spring. So we'll see in terms of the bullpen, because I think that's important. I want to pivot, though, and it's not on your agenda that you sent me earlier.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I'm doing this because you brought up something that triggered this for me, not in a bad way, but we talk about being jaded from the Wilpon regime. So all the negativity that's happened this offseason, and there has been some between them, the Mickey Callaway stuff, Jared Porter. Do you attribute that more to the Wilpon regime, or do you think that kind of like organizational flaws? I think it's important we talk about that.
Well, I think the Callaway one is probably more legitimate of a question, and I'll put it to you this way. I think that the Porter thing, what happened there, and without really knowing anything really about it, just kind of having gotten the nitty gritty of the fact pattern when it happened and supposedly came out, and the details of these two people having an interaction, I haven't heard stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, that said where Porter was like habitually involved in stuff like this.
Porter had one. It was one person, but repeatedly, I believe.
Right. Well, right. The
And
story.
he had a known reputation that did get around after this happened. A lot of people knew about it, but didn't speak up. That's my understanding.
Okay, because like from what I've heard, Callaway supposedly did have a reputation.
Yeah, Callaway was more like I don't want to say serial, but like, you know what I mean? It was almost like, what they call it, the worst kept secret.
Right.
And it seems like a lot more of his stuff happened in Cleveland. But I think that
all right, so you hit the nail on the head, right? You hit the nail on the head, frankly, in my opinion. This is the way I look at it. Mickey Callaway had whatever issues he has, and he did whatever he did. And he did it during his, allegedly, I'll say, during his rise to prominence, which was as pitching coach of the Cleveland Indians. There hasn't been suggestion, for example, that he started doing this. Like once he got to New York, the sheer amount of female journalists was just so insane.
No, he wasn't innocent by all accounts in New York. He was still doing his
right. Still Randy, let's say.
Still being himself. Let's keep it at that.
Whatever it was that he did. But I think this is more about, and this is where you might not necessarily like my take on it, and that's fine. We can
have every right. Go for it.
But I just think that the Mets are sort of like the clearinghouse for negative storylines when it comes to sports media. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the Jets, actually, in a lot of ways, where the easiest copy to write, the easiest way to get clicks nowadays is to go negative. And there's certain teams that have like a brand that's associated with them that's negative. It's almost like here we go again. Da, 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 da. So with stuff like the Jets, the Knicks, the Mets, anytime there's an opportunity to paint some negative light. Now, it's not to say that there isn't legitimate concern and outcry when somebody does something that's of a sexual harassing or inappropriate nature. There should be. But at the same time, you can't tell me that it's the Mets' fault that he did something in Cleveland and one of the 32 other clubs in baseball supposedly didn't think enough to say, hey, heads up, guys, this guy apparently has a reputation for X, Y, and Z. Because, again, it's not like you can know everything all the time about everybody. When you're trying to interview somebody to become a manager of a baseball team, that's what you're focused on. At least I think you should be. And I understand that there's character concerns. There always is. Anytime you get a job, you have to go through a background check. You have to go through this. You have to go through that. And obviously, the more woke way of looking at this would be to say there isn't enough awareness about this kind of issue. And that's why it kind of gets swept under the rug or whatever it may be. I think that there's probably a lot of stuff out there where guys in sports are jerks about any number of different things. And it doesn't get the same level of scrutiny because it's not going to catch as much attention because like why when Callaway and Porter and all that happened, was it always about the fact that they were associated with the Mets? With Porter, that specifically happened while he was working for the Chicago Cubs, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. No, you're right.
Callaway, again, whatever he did do as manager of the Mets certainly could have crossed that threshold of inappropriate or whatever, but it wasn't alleged that he was like making his bones doing that during his time in New York. So I don't know. I look at it like it's another punching bag situation for the Mets. The thing that's interesting to me is it didn't really take this time as much. You know, I think the Mets have been saying the right things, and you have to hope that they're sincere in saying, we're going to change this, do that, try to be better about our different hiring stuff.
That's PR spin.
Exactly. But at the same time,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I think of one element of this, and let me precursor this by saying I in no way support what either of them did in any way. I think both of them deserve to lose their job. Mickey Callaway, I think, still has his job, but until they finish their investigation.
Oh, does he really? I didn't realize.
Yeah, they have an interim pitching coach in
Angels pitching coach.
Yeah,
right?
It's Los Angeles. But at the same time, a decade ago, was before the Me Too movement. And I think a lot more was okay. I'm not saying it was okay, but was passable before all of that happened. So things that you could say in passing wouldn't elicit a response. And then things changed, as they should have. And, with the way Mickey Callaway behaved while he was going through, or Jared Porter while they were going through the minor leagues, getting to a major league team, again, not saying their behavior was right. It almost like the whole landscape changed for men, but the relationship between men and women in general with all of this.
Well, so yeah. And actually, you know what? That's where I think there's, not to totally get into the issue, because it's more.
I know we could go for days.
We could, but and it's more of a sidebar, and that's fine. We have other stuff we want to talk about with the Mets themselves. But when it comes to the alleged fact pattern, I do look at Porter a little bit differently, because just with my rose-colored glasses on, I can imagine a situation when it comes to Porter where there was a little bit of a language barrier involved. Even the reporting about it said that there was sort of potentially romantic interest from her at one point that then potentially was rescinded. A lot of text messages with not a response. Again, that could mean a number of different things. Is he the kind of person that texts that way, where he sends a number of texts, one almost like simple words right after another? Anyway, the nitty-gritty of it doesn't even have to be gotten into that expressly. But Callaway potentially is more one of those guys where you can look at it and be like, all right, guys, got to clean it up. Can't be X, Y, and Z. Can't be doing X, Y, and Z when this is a workplace now that's an inclusive workplace. Right. I understand it may not have been in 1955, but there's plenty of women, for example, that work in baseball now. You can't do X, Y, and Z. Now, Callaway, there's other more specific allegations as well, but we don't have to get into it. Some of it more him just supposedly being kind of like a chauvinist or whatever, that type of thing.
Absolutely. And I think the issue of, women in baseball still, men still outweigh them probably 3 or 4 to 1, I would imagine, easy.
Sure.
And fear of retribution, losing your job and stuff, that's all still very real. But, hopefully, every day could take a step forward and this can improve.
And not to get into all of it, but I think so much of that stuff is changing. You even look at stuff like on the national, or not national, the state level with New York and Cuomo and all these people that supposedly, again, it's all allegations right now, but plenty of people who said, oh, that is untouchable. You can't do that. You can't go after this one. You can't do this. You can't do after that.
Sure can.
That's all. So, I mean, again, that potentially is an upshot, not just for baseball, but other stuff too. So, all right. So anyway, switching gears a little bit, the Mets supposedly down there in Port St. Lucie today, I shouldn't say supposedly, because there's been articles written and there's video of it and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. I have to go watch the video, by the way. I have to make that point because I haven't seen it. And that's one of the things I've always wanted to see as a Mets fan. I mean, if I die a happy man, I'll see a pile on the mound. So anyway,
it wasn't quite a pile. It was more like everybody jumping, but they tried to simulate it, and the reporters loved it, of course.
All right, so let's actually talk about what we're talking about here. So the Mets practiced what it would be like if they won a World Series. Now, this was down at Port St. Lucie. They had a exercise. They did a drill where they called it 27 and out or something like that, right? Yeah. Because you have to get 27. You have to make 27 straight plays without an error to simulate the length of a ball game. And at the end of the game, if you do that, you win the drill. You're done. So they went through it. They're hitting them fungos. They're hitting them fly balls. They're going through it. They make the play. And the 27th out from former outfielder Tony Tarasco was the one hitting fungos at this point. He flew a fly ball out to right field, and Conforto fly ball out to right field, and Conforto caught it. And then they all came together and they celebrated as if they just won the World Series. Now I saw where ESPN.com. Now, again, this is to my point with all the Mets stuff. Okay. ESPN.com had like a headline saying, oh, Mets practice World Series down in spring training. And I'm like, what is this? What does that mean? That's where I first learned about it. Yeah. So I read they came together in sort of like a group out in shallow right field, I guess, and celebrated as if they'd won the World Series. So the whole idea being potentially, and I think they quoted Dom Smith talking about it or something like that. He said, you know what? You got to put out good vibes. You got to put out good feelings and all this kind of stuff. I got to tell you, and I have a slight feeling that you're going to disagree with me on this, but we'll find out. I love it. I love the fact that they're doing this kind of stuff. I think it's awesome. I think it's exactly the kind of thing you need going into a long baseball season where the eye has to be sort of like a little bit on the prize. You know what I mean? Like you can't afford to ever just kind of fall into, whatever, it's a job. We're showing up every day, this, that, the other. I like these guys in the clubhouse. It's cool. You know what I mean? Like nothing's going to this, that, the other. You want to be grinding. You know what I mean? You want to be focused on that brass ring and thinking about it. And of course you can't get too tight. And what do I know? I've never played baseball beyond, trying to do it for fun. But at the same time, I love the idea that they're raising the stakes, saying, hell yeah, that's what this is about this year. And potentially inviting some of exactly what's happening right now, because that's how you build some of the accountability. Furthermore, I think that's how you start to get away from some of the negativity and the easy punching bag status that the Mets have been in the media, where it's, yeah, bring it on. We're trying to get to the playoffs. We want to get to the playoffs. We think we should be in the playoffs. And then you see what happens. Then it's a crapshoot.
Or is it bulletin board fodder for the NL East? Because I could totally see a scenario. Let's say I can't even think. They open against Washington or Atlanta. I forget. But
I think it's Washington.
Yeah, I could totally see the Nationals or the Braves after like that first win against the Mets doing a jump up and down on the mound just to mock them. And if that happened, it would annoy me, but I'd laugh. I would laugh.
You could see the snarky quote to the press pool, like, we saw that they were celebrating their October style down there in Florida. But once the games start, it's a little different.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's going to happen.
Ultimately, it depends on.
Let them do it. Let them say whatever they want.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got to face DeGrom. You got to face Carrasco. You got to face, Stroman. Well, let's just hope. We got to face. He gets a lot of ground balls.
I forget who said it. Somebody picked Stroman as a dark horse Cy Young candidate. I heard that the other day.
CC Sabathia.
Oh, Sabathia, right. I did see that. I was like, okay, if that happens, we're gonna have a very special year.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Let's not forget, in July, you get Noah Syndergaard back, and pretty much anything you get from him is gravy. So
I think that this is what's so great about the Mets right now, and it's easy to say on March 10th, but whatever. It's that Syndergaard really does kind of represent gravy, as he should. He's coming off Tommy John surgery with a lot of upside. But, in past years, it would be, and you made the great point on the first show that we did, and Cy Young caliber Noah Syndergaard will be coming in June. It's like making a trade for
I get it bothers me. But it's funny that the thing with the celebration is those cynical Met fans have to try really hard, especially the older ones. My father's a perfect example. He's that guy that will find the one thing and worry about it, as opposed to focusing on the everything else that's going well. So he sees that fodder. Oh no, they're the kiss of death, or he's very superstitious.
Yeah,
so, or come and get us, Brody Van Wagenen. Come and get us. Everybody came and got you. It's like you're asking for it. Like, why give them a reason to get that extra motivation? But I'm more, believe it or not, I'm more on your side with this. I definitely like the positivity, power of positivity. I definitely think it closeness to the clubhouse gives that guy an extra boost. And, they enjoy playing with people and have that positive attitude. You never know what could come of it. And I think the Mets have a really good group of guys. I think that's important. It doesn't seem like there's that one guy that's like, you really have to worry about personality wise, like a real troublemaker. So Yeah, why not? I have no problem with it. It's kids being kids, and why not? Baseball's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, look, Turk Wendell jumping over the foul line notwithstanding, I don't think the Mets are the superstitious franchise. You know what I mean?
No.
Like the Mets are 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth, down 2 runs in Game 6 of the '86 World Series, and somehow figuring it out. The Mets are you got to believe, and the Mets are Davy Johnson saying in '86, we're going to dominate basically. I'm not suggesting that that's the way they should be this time around. I'm just saying I think the Mets have a little bit of that where if they're going to break out from the mold, it has to be a little bit of that. A little bit of
Do
that.
you remember the 2000 team that went to the World Series? Do you remember the theme song?
Who let the Mets out?
Oh my gosh, with the Baja Men.
Who let the dog? Well, it's really who let the dogs out. But they had the version of it. Who let the Mets out?
Yes, I remember.
And I remember the Yankees because back then it was they still do it, but it's for the different individual markets. Z100's team comes up with their morning show, comes up with a song for each team in the World Series, and since they're in so many different markets, they come up with whatever that market's Royals or whatever But since they're New York based, we always knew about it whenever the Mets were or Yankees were in the World Series. That year, I remember the Yankees. It was what was it? Some sort of like club. Let's go Yankees. Dun, 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 dun. I can't think of it. It was some sort of like club.
It bothers me that you said the words out loud.
It's now been on this show. It's now been said.
No, scrub it. Forget it. We're done after 2 episodes.
But you know what? The fact that I said it on this particular show probably means that there's some bad juju I'm sending out there.
Yes, there is. Starting with that hat and then moving on to that. And I mean, you're failing on all levels today.
Yes. All right. So we feel good about the Practice World Series celebration. I feel good about that. And I am going to watch the video of it later because it might be the only chance I get. It might be the only chance I get to see that. You know what I mean? I'm willing to accept that.
And maybe afterwards you'll be like, I was completely wrong now that I've seen it.
Because like you said, it wasn't a pile.
No, it was innocent fun.
I am very happy to see that the Mets are going to have the Tom Seaver patch on their jersey this year. I mean, I would say obviously. I mean, may he rest in peace. Tom, terrific, the franchise. We just lost him, this past offseason. It doesn't feel like it was even as long ago as it was maybe, but how about that? That's a good move, right? Yeah, good time in the Cohen era that they're going to take care of that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. They took care of the statue announcement. They renamed the street.
That was all.
That was well done. And then
get it late. It'd be wrong to say because a lot of people.
No, it should have been done let's say at least a decade ago. I mean, probably longer. But at the same time, kudos to them for doing the right thing. So what's right is right.
Right.
Even though it's not done yet. So I look forward to seeing it and visiting it and such. At the same, and you know what? The fact that they did it so late, it's a damn shame. He's not going to get to be there and see it. Well, I mean, that's if they did it 10 years ago, he would have been able to.
Right.
He was also never really. I mean, I know he did the announcing thing for a little bit, which between you and me, as great of a baseball player as he was, I did not love him as an analyst at all. I thought he had a little bit of a froggish voice, but.
It's just funny. I remember my Nana, who watched Mets game. She loved the Mets. May she rest in peace. She hated Seaver as a color commentator. I can't even remember.
She hated him as a player. I don't know who she was watching.
No. But she was actually, I think, a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. Maybe.
Oh.
So I don't even know how much she rooted for those early, Mets teams or not. But she did not like Seaver as a commentator. I remember that.
But yeah, they definitely did the right thing. To rename the street and the patches, it's deserved. I mean, he is and always will be the best pitcher this team's ever had. I love Jacob deGrom. When all said and done, deGrom's got to be number 2. And there's nothing to be ashamed of with that. I mean, he could be a Hall of Famer when all said and done and still be number 2. But Seaver did some things that just aren't reachable in today's baseball. I mean, the way they pitched back then and pitching both ends of a doubleheader and just crazy things like that. The pitchers today just can't do what they did then. It's almost like their arms will fall off. Look what happened to Matt Harvey. Look what happened to Johan Santana with the no-hitter. I mean, their arms almost legitimately just stopped working. I mean, Harvey's back with the Orioles, though. I don't know if you saw that. He got lit up in his first spring start.
Yeah, I know. I
want to root for him. I do. I want to root for him.
So do I.
The New York media and Twitter and everything is still very obsessed with him. So
yeah, I love Harvey. I mean, I'd love to see him succeed. I was surprised at the contract he got from Anaheim.
Yeah, he got like $13 million or something like that.
It was a lot of money, and it was like, okay, and it didn't work out for them.
Good for him, though. He got $13 million more.
Get that bag, secure that bag. They say.
Yeah.
But I would like to see him do well with Baltimore. I know he did not do well in his first start in spring training. I guess
not exactly a place to go to do well.
No, exactly. Camden Yards is not a ballpark or a division you want to find yourself in.
No.
But I think I heard where his velocity was still down too and stuff. I mean, I don't know. It sucks. I'd love to see him maybe try to make it as a reliever or something. I don't know. I think he's got to give up.
Yeah, I think that's what his future probably holds. I would be shocked if in a year or two he's not out of baseball completely. I hate to say it. It's easy to think what could have been, but he just didn't hold up.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, he was a great Met. I'll always love Harvey. I'll always have a special place in my heart for him. I was hard on him when it looked like they were going to shut him down in 2015. Speaking of Twitter, I remember not being kind to the notion that he was high and dry. And obviously Strasburg did it, and his career has been pretty good. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Who knows what the science of it is or isn't? I mean, Harvey had the thoracic outlet, which I think really was more the problem. But I mean, who's to say that isn't caused by too much after Tommy John? I don't know. I mean, who knows? I feel like we're talking about MRIs again. You know what I mean? Like, I have no idea. But at the same time, I think that there's a lot to be said for the fact that Harvey was a great Met when he was here, and he had a great mini accomplishment. I wish he could have brought that game home. You know what I mean? Game 5 or whatever it was in the World Series. But
I got something for you because I just was wondering. I remembered because he had thoracic outlet. He had the surgery for that. And there were less than 20 major league pitchers in history have had that surgery, including ready. Here's some names: Phil Hughes, Jaime Garcia, Chris Young. That was the big one at first. I remember hearing Chris Young, Tyson Ross, and Chris Carpenter.
Yeah.
And Chris Archer of the Pirates was just diagnosed in 2020 and underwent surgery in June. So we'll see how he does with the Rays.
Interesting.
Isn't it amazing that fleece job that the Rays did with the Pirates for Archer, and now they got Archer back? It's almost like they're laughing in their face.
It's unbelievable. No, that was really, I mean, I hate that too, because I really consider the Pirates kind of like a little bit of a secretly. I like the Pirates the first ever game.
Yeah, I can root for them too.
First game I ever went to was Mets Pirates at Shea Stadium. So,
really?
Oh yeah, the Barry Bonds, Andy Van Slyke, Bobby Bonilla.
Oh wow, Bobby Bo used to be my favorite Met when I was younger.
Okay. So there you go. I'm going to show you the Bronx. The Pirates. I love the Pirates, but they are not well run. Thank goodness we're not doing a Pirates podcast. I'll say that much.
No, they're just not. I feel like they're not operating with a full deck. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, and a great ballpark too. I haven't even been there, but I've seen it.
It's on my list. I definitely want to take the trip one day. Maybe go for like a weekend series when they're playing the Mets, and to go for 2 games and come back or something.
Yeah,
definitely. I want to do that. Like, I don't want to say later in life, but when I have more time to do stuff like that, maybe with my dad, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, my parents now are both retired, and they've talked about going on like a tour of ballparks and stuff like that. And I've said, yeah, do it. You should. You know what I mean? Like, why not? It's so much easier in some ways than you think to knock out a bunch of them. You know what I mean? Like you could even go somewhere, rent a car. It's not even that bad to go from like, Cincinnati to Pittsburgh, for example. And you knock out 2 right there.
Right.
So
I always wanted to go on a road trip with like drive to wherever the Mets are and like follow them to their next stop. Like go to like, I don't know, in 10 days, go to like 7 games or something. That would be cool.
Well, a bunch of people did that when they clinched in 2015, right? Because I mean,
right.
they clinched in Cincy, and
big ovation.
Yeah.
I remember that well.
So anyway, we'll see if we can muster up some of that stuff this year here. We would certainly enjoy that. We would not mind a little bit of a repeat of a 2015 and having some of those kinds of memories. Before we call it a day on episode 2 for Flipping the Mic, how about talking a couple prospects that we're getting our first look at here in spring training? Ronnie, is it Ronnie or Ronnie?
Ronnie Mauricio, who's hit only like 450 in spring or something like that.
I mean, this kid, if you like drew him up in a lab, you'd find yourself saying, maybe a 6'3" switch hitting shortstop with a rocket arm and potential to grow into some power. I mean, this kid, look, any prospect anything could happen. But I remember seeing him when he first, I think 2 years ago in spring training, or I guess last year, and thinking this kid could be something. You know what I mean? Like he's got to grow into his body a little bit, but this kid could be a stud. Ronnie Mauricio. I don't know. They say maybe he's not going to stay at shortstop because he's so big, but switch.
I could see him being at third base. I think that makes a lot of sense. The Mets have an opening.
Yep. And obviously, if they sign Lindor, then that kind of blocks the whole shortstop.
Right. They also have Brett Beatty, who they're really impressed with, and he's on that list of guys. Sandy said, what did he say? Not trading from the top 8 or something like that, or top 7, whatever it was.
He said that they're basically not.
Yeah, I think the Mets are excited about. I mean, overall, the Mets system is probably right around the middle, maybe even a little lower. But they have some interesting guys up there, and they have some guys that could contribute this year. I'm not saying superstar types, but one guy that jumps out at me, Thomas Zapucki, a left-handed pitcher that could definitely have a role in the pen or be a spot starter. He's of age, and I think he's pretty close to being ready. And then if you want to look a little bit down the line, they have a number of arms that are really interesting. And JT Ginn, Matthew Allen hitting 97 while working with Jacob deGrom. I love that he's taken him under his wing. I mean, learn from the best. And then you have Pete Crow Armstrong, who's going to be looks like a really good defensive outfielder. I was a little sad. I liked Isaiah Green a lot, who they included in the Lindor trade, but you got to give to get. Same as Jimenez. I wasn't too sad to see Rosario go, to be honest. I thought that overall the Mets won that trade big time, especially getting Cookie back too.
I mean, look, and I read somebody on Twitter saying, I just saw an Indians game and it hurts to see Jimenez and all this kind of stuff. I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I think Jimenez could be a very good player, but I'm with you. I mean, I think that in a situation like this where the Mets are in right now, they're trying to take advantage of they had a relatively soft payroll. It's not as soft now. And they said to themselves, okay, for pennies on the dollar on the prospect side, we can go out and get this guy and in essence secure an option ahead of free agency. You know what I mean? Like that's really what it comes down to. And for a guy like Lindor, who's potentially gonna, you would hope, find me some wood to knock on, enjoy being part of a good baseball team in New York. Thank you. He's gonna want to resign. So I think it's the right move. I think it's the move they had to make. And yeah, you would have rather, always, of course, sign a guy in free agency and only lose a draft pick or something like that. But, what are you going to do? And I
think it serves Lindor best to sign before the season. I think he's going to. I think that's going to be the last big thing that happens before the season starts. I think they're going to announce it and be done. I mean, in a dream world, they would take care of him and Conforto, but I think Conforto is probably going to linger a little bit. I just have a feeling. But for optics, the Mets have to re-sign him. And I think for Lindor, he's going to get his $300 million. And I think he's going to get he realizes there's about 5 or 6 good shortstops coming on this market. So, I mean, they're all going to get a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but I think he likes it here. He likes the market. He likes the attention. He loves to be happy. He's kind of like Jose Reyes with more power and probably a smarter baseball player, because Jose Reyes was a bit of a bonehead sometimes. Great player overall. He was a great Met. I mean, I appreciate everything he did. But
so let me just interject, because you're sort of on your way to doing something I was going to ask you to do before we go for the night. My brother, my older brother, who I think may be watching right now, he was at least watching before.
Okay.
He's a big Mets fan, but he doesn't necessarily know as much about the Cleveland Indians shortstop. So I was telling him, I was like, trust me, because he didn't. I think I told you the first show we did, he wasn't crazy. He saw Lindor dancing in the batter's box or something.
Right.
I was like, this guy dancing? Why is he dancing? I said, no, this guy's a stud. So how would you? You said Jose Reyes with more power. He's not quite that fast as Jose Reyes in his prime.
No, he's It's an interesting comparison. He is a better shortstop than Jose Reyes was. He is a better base runner than Jose Reyes was. And when I say that, I mean running the bases, not base stealer. But also Reyes, I don't know if you remember, Reyes was if he got on first and needed him to steal a base, he was terrible going early in the count. And it really drove me bananas. And then by the time, he always ended up waiting for the batter to be in a position where they couldn't give him a pitch. And, that's important to get to that base so the batter can focus on doing what they have to do. And it'd also be 1 and 2. And now the batter can't take strike 3, obviously. So overall, I'll stand by what I said. Jose Reyes, more power, obviously not as fast, but ultimately he'll be, if all goes right, he'll be one of the top 5 best offensive players they've ever had.
I think that's a good way to put it, and I think you're absolutely right. And I am, for one, excited about watching him every day, hopefully kind of bringing so much of that all together, the lineup, the infield, the whole thing. So we'll see.
But, and let's not forget that Coming to America jacket that was straight fire that he wore.
True. I know. I want that jacket.
You mean both.
I don't know if I need all the flair,
the bling,
because that's very Coming to America and kind of very specific. Just the jacket itself.
Yeah, I liked it too.
None of the accoutrement.
All right, let me know if you see it. Maybe we could do a buy one get one 50% off or something.
I'll look for it. I'll go to. I was going to say Marshalls. Is that still okay?
I have one 2 minutes from my house. I'll look too.
There you go. All right. So look, this has been Flippin' the Mike. He's Mike Yancey at Daily Stash on Twitter. I'm James Flippin. You can follow me on Twitter at Jamadrop, Jamadrop. I'm also on Instagram at Flippin' Out Radio. So how do we do this here? How do we end the show? I think you're the one who says it, right?
Let's go Mets.
There we go.